The Pontchartrain Park Pioneers Oral History Project is presented by the Center for African and African American Studies at Southern University at New Orleans and the following sponsors. The National Park Service, the United States Department of the Interior through the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, and the Division of Historic Preservation. My name is Dr. Clyde Robertson. I'm the Director of the Center for African and African American Studies at Southern University at New Orleans. I am also the Director, co-researcher, and co-interviewer for the Pontchartrain Park Pioneers Oral History Project. This oral history project examines the lives and experiences of the original homeowners and residents of Pontchartrain Park. The Pontchartrain Park Pioneers Oral History Project's team consists of Connie Abdel Salam, Assistant Professor of History at Southern University at New Orleans; Dr. Mike Meehan, Director of Satellite Communications at Southern University at New Orleans; and Ms. Frances Helena, Senior Psychology Major, Southern University at New Orleans. Today's interview takes place in the Millie Charles School of Social Work at Southern University at New Orleans. Today's date is July 31st, 2019, and the time is 4:44 p.m. Please tell me your name.
I'm Josie Young Lewis.
And your birth date.
October the 11th, 1932.
Were you born in New Orleans?
Yes, at Flint Goodrich Hospital.
Where did you grow up in New Orleans?
I lived in New Orleans, uptown New Orleans, on Calhoun Street, right near Tulane University and McAllister Place. I was a block away from them. And we often, my sisters and I, babysat for the people in McAllister Place who were attending Tulane.
So you babysat for older white people in the community?
Yes.
Where did you go to school?
I went to McDonough 24 School on Adams Street, where Connie Hill was the principal.
And high school?
I went to McDonough 35. Before that, though, I went to Booker T. Washington for 1 year because McDonough 35 started with the 10th grade at that time.
And who was the principal at
Lucian V. Alexis.
At Booker Washington?
No.
At McDonough 35?
At McDonough 35, but Lawrence Crocker was the principal at Booker T. Washington.
And did you go to college?
Pardon?
Did you go to college?
Oh, yes. I went to Xavier University, and I finished in 1954.
With what
with
degree?
I finished in sociology with a minor in library science.
Were you married?
Yes, I married in 1955 to Philip Lewis.
And so you married 1 year after graduating from college. Did you know Mr. Lewis at Xavier?
No. I worked in St. Martin Parish for 4 years, and that is where I met him, in Breaux Bridge.
And when you say you worked, you taught, you worked at a school?
Yeah, I was a teacher librarian there.
And you met Mr. Lewis and married in 1955?
Yes.
Where did you all live initially, you and Mr. Lewis?
Well, initially we lived in Breaux Bridge until 58. And then we moved to Rocheblair Street across from McDonough 42. And then in 1960, we moved into Pontchartrain Park.
Okay. Was Mr. Lewis from New Orleans or Beaubridge?
No, he was from Beaubridge.
So you lived on Russia-Blave Street before moving into Pontchartrain Park in 1960.
Yeah.
How did you find out about Pontchartrain Park?
Well, my daddy was a golfer, Clifford Young. He played out at the golf course there. And we saw the park and we decided we wanted to live out here.
So it was your father who informed you about Pontchartrain Park?
Well, when we came to the park with him, we saw Pontchartrain Park.
Had you encountered any newspaper articles about the park or any advertisements prior to that point?
I don't remember.
Do you remember the Urbanly Questionnaire survey of 1954?
No.
Are you familiar with the Stearns and Rosa Keller's work to bring Pontchartrain Park into fruition?
Rosa Keller belonged to the Friends of Amistad, which is a group that I served as president one year.
Are you familiar with the work that they pursued to bring Pontchartrain Park into reality? Back in 1954,
Not completely, but I knew they had played a part in it.
Were you likewise familiar with Alexander Pierre Toureau's efforts to stop Pontchartrain Park from being a segregated community?
Not really, but I knew of A.P. Toureau, and I knew his children.
But you weren't familiar with his efforts to stunt the development of Pontchartrain Park?
No.
So when you purchased your home, were you an educator at that time in 1960?
Yes.
Do you remember where you worked at the time?
In 1960, I was at Frederick Junior High School, Rivers Frederick, on 2 Road Street.
Was Mr. Lewis a teacher?
No.
What did Mr. Lewis do?
Well, he worked as an orderly at Baptist Hospital. Then he worked out at the Michoud facility.
When you started visiting Pontchartrain Park with your father, what was the first thing that attracted you to Pontchartrain Park?
Well, the fact that there were these nice homes out here and that that possibly I could have one of them.
So, you moved into Pontchartrain Park in 1960.
June 1960.
Who sold you your home?
I don't remember his name, but he was there with Ross, who was one of the salesperson. But I do remember him, but I can't remember his name.
And your home was on the corner of Campus and Prentice. Providence and Prentice. What attracted you to your home? Why that particular home as opposed to one on another street?
Well, they were in the process of building it, and I wanted to get into it as soon as possible.
Now, when you purchased your home, did you have children?
No.
Were there neighbors already living in homes when you moved into yours?
Yes.
Did you know anyone who lived in the park at that time? Or did you meet them as you moved in?
I basically met them as I moved in. I'm thinking John Rue may have lived over, and he was one of my daddy's golf partners.
And did you know other people, like your neighbors, across the street to the side of you?
I got to know them, like your mom and dad. We lived next door to each other. And Lillian Jones across the street, and Floyd Wilson.
Do you remember how you financed your home? For example, was Mr. Lewis a veteran?
Yes, he was.
And did you use the VA bill?
I think we did.
Were there any
I think
other?
we had to make a small down payment, and I think Crawford Holmes was in charge at that time, and we paid our note to Crawford Holmes.
Kind of picks up on the mic.
All right. Now, can you describe your home's floor plan when you first moved in? For example, living room, dining room, kitchen. What was your home's floor plan?
Living room and 3 bedrooms, which we later converted into one of the bedrooms into a dining room, and we added a carport and another small room, a walk-in closet, and a bath.
And this was during the years subsequent to your moving in, prior to one of the hurricanes or afterwards?
I don't remember exactly when.
Right. So, when you and Mr. Lewis moved in, you did not have children.
No.
Did you have children afterwards?
We adopted Tony.
How was Pontchartrain Park? What kind of environment was the park for raising children?
I think it was a very good environment.
For example?
Well, I sent Tony to the Thibodeau Nursery School, which was an excellent. Miss Thibodeau was like a mother to the children. We all loved her.
And was this center in Pontchartrain Park or elsewhere?
In Pontchartrain Park.
What made that center so special, other than Miss Thibodeau loved the children?
Well, it was spacious and convenient, and she had them to perform, and it kind of helped bring them out, you know. I remember Tony had the Nero jacket on one occasion.
Describe the park when you first moved in, Pontchartrain Park. Describe Pontchartrain Park when you first moved in. For example, a lot of children, activities on the playground.
Yeah, there were a lot of children and activities on the playground. I know at least once a year around the 4th of July, we had a big celebration, and with all the niceties.
Now, there was a playground in Pontchartrain Park, the Nord Playground, New Orleans Recreation Department Playground. Mm-hmm. Were you involved? Was Tony involved in the playground?
Well, Tony went to the playground, yeah.
Was he a part of the Nord programming?
Yes, it was.
Did you become a part of the Booster Club, Pontchartrain Park Booster Club?
I don't remember.
Now, as you moved into your home and became settled, were there activities that you would sponsor at your home for the neighborhood children?
Yes, they were always welcome to come and play in my yard, and I had this big birthday party. I think I said that before. And I always encouraged him to have people over.
Your mother was Mrs. Young.
Yes.
And Mrs. Young would come and spend time at your home
Right,
a great deal.
and she always had a group of children in there, in the yard, with different activities, and she enjoyed it, and they did too.
I was one of them. When you moved in the park, there were already people living there. Did they accept you and Mr. Lewis?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Pontchartrain Park was a place where a great many people lived, a great many families lived in the neighborhood. Do you remember any great stories, any legends about the neighborhood?
Well, I can remember, some of the people who lived there. The Dejois lived down across from the park, and by the golf course down there.
And why were they important? Why were they important to you?
Well, they were my daddy's friends, and then we had Dr. Pratt, who was a Xavier graduate that I knew, and well, I'm trying to think of some of the others, but it's been a while.
Of course, Mr. Moriel, who became the first
Yes,
African-American
right.
mayor.
Sybil and Dutch lived down on Press Drive, right?
Did you find Pontchartrain Park to be a neighborhood where a lot of teachers and thus your colleagues lived?
Right. There were a number of teachers living here.
Did that assist you in your professional experience, being around a lot of teachers? Did that help you?
Well, I felt comfortable around them, yes.
Getting back to the urban myths, do you remember the myth about the lady in white?
No.
Okay. What were some of the, you raised a child in Pontchartrain Park. What advantages were there to raising a child in Pontchartrain Park?
Well, one of the big advantages was the playground, where there was always somewhere to go to play ball, and I think Tony joined the what was it, the football team or something. But the funniest thing, the time I went to see him play, he wasn't there. He was in somebody's house.
And what did you do when you found that out?
I went looking for him, and I found him on Providence Street, placed down at one of his friend's house.
Were there disadvantages to having your child in Pontchartrain Park?
I don't think there were any disadvantages.
What did you and your family do for recreation? And I know there was the playground. Were there any other thing? You had family gatherings and neighborhood gatherings.
Yes.
Were there any other activities that you pursued?
Yeah, I'm an avid bridge player, and I do that now. I had belonged to about 3 different bridge clubs, but I belong to one now, to which Miss Margaret Adams still plays. And then we played bridge the great thing was the center was opened, and I played bridge over there, and the director of the center and her assistant, they are great at planning things. I think one time, well, we go to the casino, but I also went to, I think it was Azalea Gardens in Mobile or something with them. And that was a lovely trip. And she always plans trips, but I don't really go on the trips. But she has a lovely program over there. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, I go there.
Now, the center that you're talking about was opened after Hurricane Katrina in Pontchartrain Park. Or was it pre-Hurricane Katrina?
I think it might have been pre, and then they had to redo some things and got it started again.
We're going to revisit that line of questioning. Right now, I want to talk about the park prior to Hurricane Katrina and even Hurricane Betsy. Continuing on with that line of questioning, down the street from Pontchartrain Park on Press Drive, there is a neighboring community, Gentilly Woods. Mm-hmm. For most of your life in Pontchartrain Park, Gentilly Woods was a similarly built in terms of the architecture of the homes, but it was a white community.
Right.
Did you experience any difficulty as you traversed Gentilly Woods?
No, and I attended St. Gabriel the Archangel Church, which at first was almost, everybody was white. But then they redid the church, and then it finally got to be mostly black. And
so you never experienced any racial hardships?
No.
Either at St. Gabriel the Archangel Church
See,
or the community?
as a youngster, I lived in an all-white neighborhood. And we knew we were colored, and, there were limits, and with some people. And others were open-hearted, and they found us there because that was my grandfather's house there. And around the corner from there, his brothers had lived around on Palmer Avenue. And we accepted things as they were.
And so you answered how you actually came to live in the uptown neighborhood, which was white. So you all were there prior to.
Yeah, my grandfather and his family lived around there.
And you didn't experience any racial animus from those in Gentilly Woods?
No.
All right.
No.
Now, we know that you weren't a member of the Pontchartrain Park Booster Club. Were you, prior to the two hurricanes that really impacted upon New Orleans, Betsy and Katrina, were you a part of the Pontchartrain Park Association?
Oh, yeah.
What were your experiences with the Pontchartrain Park Association? What were your responsibilities, if any?
Well, I basically went to the meetings, but now I feel more a part of the group with Gretchen at the head, and I do participate with them.
All right. Now, 1965, we experienced Hurricane Katrina.
Betsy.
Betsy.
Hurricane Betsy,
Yeah.
1965. Was your home damaged, and if so, how?
Yes, we left. We had to redo the floors, and
So your home flooded.
yeah, it flooded. Yeah,
Do you remember how many inches or feet of water?
no.
And so when you say you redid the floor, did you get governmental assistance? Did you have homeowners insurance? How did you?
I had homeowners insurance. Yes.
I have heard from many people that those homes in Pontchartrain Park that were flooded in 1965 were actually modernized when they were repaired. Was that the case with
I
your
think
home?
so. Yeah.
And how so? You did the flood. Did you get air conditioning for example, central air?
No, I didn't have central air.
So I know that after our home was flooded in Betsy,
Yeah.
and several of the homes on Prentice, central air was added. Prior to that, we hadn't had air.
Yeah. I didn't get central air until after Katrina.
So you moved right back into your home after Hurricane Betsy in 1965.
Yeah. I stayed with my sister maybe a month, and then until it was ready.
So we know that 1965, 1966, 67, through the 70s, Pontchartrain Park remained a very powerful, close-knit neighborhood. Approaching the 1980s, did you start seeing a change in Pontchartrain Park?
I don't know exactly when it was, but I know right along through here we have some undesirables moving in.
That's now.
Yes.
Right. But you don't recall it changing prior to Hurricane Katrina?
Not really.
Let's talk about Hurricane Katrina, 2005. In late August, very early September, Hurricane Katrina impacted the entire city, including Pontchartrain Park. Did you evacuate before the storm?
Yes, I evacuated. Before the storm, I went to Georgia.
And the storm hit. Did it impact upon your home?
Yes, yes.
How so?
Up to the ceiling.
Water.
Yeah,
So that would be roughly 10 feet.
I would say.
And you moved to Georgia. How long did you stay in Georgia? And what part of Georgia?
It was a little place outside of Alpharetta. I can never remember. It was a nice place. We lived in an apartment.
And when you say we, who?
Tony and I.
When did you begin contemplating returning home?
I didn't come back for a year.
But when did you begin thinking about coming back home?
Well, I was always thinking about coming back home. But after a year, I stayed at the Pontchartrain Oaks apartment on Hain, and then I started trying to have a home built. And I guess after a year, even before they were finished, I was getting in there.
Now, did you have to tear down your home?
Oh, yes, yes.
So the home you live in now is a complete rebuild.
Right. And I have a little sketch of
the new home.
yeah.
Hold it in front of you.
That's the new home.
Very nice. And that's in the place of the very same land.
Yes, yes.
That you
It's
occupy.
turned to Providence, whereas it faced Prentice before.
This has been a presentation of the Center for African and African American Studies at Southern University at New Orleans and the following sponsors: the National Park Service, the United States Department of the Interior through the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, and the Division of Historic Preservation.